If you're ready to unlock more better days, to take control of your health, to push past your limits and unleash your full potential, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Bettel. For over 2 decades, I've worked with elite athletes and high performers, helping them optimize their bodies, strengthen their minds, and recover from setbacks. Now I'm bringing that expertise to you through the Vitality Collective podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the science, strategies, and real-world solutions you can apply right away. Whether it's enhancing your physical performance, avoiding or recovering from injury, sharpening your mental edge, or simply feeling your best every single day. With insights from top experts and thought leaders, this podcast is designed to help you take action, feel better, and live the life that you deserve. Welcome to the Vitality Collective podcast, where every day is vital. Today I'm joined by Dr. Mike T. Nelson, an exercise physiologist and educator known for his work on metabolic flexibility and cutting through the fitness industry noise. In this episode, we talk about why training matters more than you think, covering how to approach progressive overload without dogma, why context beats tribal thinking every time, and how to set realistic goals within your actual life constraints. If you're someone who's been overwhelmed by conflicting fitness advice or wondering why those celebrity transformations seem impossible to replicate, this conversation's for you. Let's get into it. Today, it's an honor to welcome to the show Dr. Mike T. Nelson. He's an educator, he's an exercise physiologist, and today he's going to just help us cut through so much of the noise that's out there on social media and in the public forum, where things seem to have gone from science to pseudoscience to now tribalism. And we really want to start cutting through some of this and bring you some actual takeaways that you can go away and implement in your life today. Mike, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're so excited for this conversation. I just love the messaging that you're putting out on social. It is no nonsense. You know, I love the nuanced approach, which is hard to find really when you start looking on social media these days. And I'd love to start with some big picture messaging. I came out of the world of pro sport, and that's sort of the philosophies that we're building Vitality Collective around. And I saw this movement of marginal gains start to come in with Dave Brailsford and British Cycling, and they started doing a lot of really advanced physiology and environmental stuff. And then we see in the public forum today biohacking and all the different supplements and ways that we can hack your physiology. When in actual fact, in both sport and in real life, the things that matter, exercise, energy balance, sleep, connection, they're not all that easy to sell. They're not very profitable. Like, how do you approach these conversations around these big rocks with your clients?
And I just tell them up front, like, hey, we're going to look at your exercise, your sleep. And the thing that they think is the issue usually isn't the issue. That may be the thing they want to work on. So I realize if I just kind of get permission to do everything, we can kind of move around and do where we need to. And again, like you said, it's focusing on the basic stuff. And if someone really pinned me down and said, okay, where would you start, psychology aside, I would actually start with training. Because I really think, as much as I love nutrition and metabolism and all the other stuff, and yes, you can make an argument for all of them, if you just don't have that stimulus applied to the body in the correct way, you're just really not going to get the result you want. Like, everybody knows on some level, if I want to get stronger, but I don't train, like, it's not going to happen. So you can kind of extend that out a little bit. If I were to pick the, air quotes, perfect training stimulus with okay nutrition versus perfect nutrition and okay training stimulus, I would take the first one all day, every day. Yeah. I would take nailing the stimulus that you want your body to adapt to first. And then, yes, let's do everything else to support it. But I think that would be the first place I would start, if everything else being equal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's always where we start as well. I've always had this opinion that that has borne out over time, that the body will adapt to whatever stimulus you put in front of it.
Of course. Yeah. Adaptation can't really be stopped.
Right. There are ways to get you there, right? There are safe ways to get you there and less safe ways to get you there. But so long as you assume that progression towards the goal that you have, it is the stimulus that's important. It's such an important thing for people to take away. And that piece about the balance of training and nutrition, if you're consistent with the training, it will move you along. And everything else is really there to support that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I have a concept I call matched macros, where if you can match the macronutrient to your training, I do think you would see some benefit from it. So if you're doing high intensity intervals, you're doing weight training, the main fuel for that is carbohydrates. So having more carbohydrates, having them available in your diet is going to help your training, and vice versa. If you're just doing zone 2 stuff, which I'm not a big fan of, but you're going for a walk, you're doing some low intensity recovery work, you don't need carbohydrates, do it in a more fasted state, run that more from fat. I think you're going to be a little bit better off. So I do think there are ways to do things better. But again, like you said, it goes back to also having the right training stimulus in place first.
Well, and that's really interesting, isn't it? Like, we have the training stimulus, and then we have all these supporting acts around it, and nutrition being a critical one. But I love what you're adding there is the element of how are we fueling now for the goal that we're going for? So if I'm doing high intensity sprints and my goal is to perform well in those, I need to fuel them. My goal is just to do them. I can show up and just do my sprints and in whatever fed state. But as we look at performance now, we need to start adding these different layers in that will augment what we're doing with the training.
Yeah. And I would argue even for, just general population, I translate everything into performance. Like even for physique clients I work with, it's literally translated into performance. Like I get it. You're on stage in your banana hammock, your underwear, nobody cares what your HRV score or how much you lifted. Like it doesn't matter. I get it. However, that is the stimulus that is going to get you, more muscle, leaner, etc. And I think too often in fitness, it's just like, calories are the only thing that matter. And yes, calories are super important. Like thermodynamics still works. We're not violating any, concepts of physics here. But if you can train for that adaptation, you can get stronger over time. Your muscle is going to get bigger. I mean, assuming you have enough calories, you get enough support structure. But trying to figure out if you gained even 3 pounds of lean body mass over 3-4 months, it's really hard to tell. Even with DEXA and everything else, it's below the rate of what we'd be able to change. But if your dumbbell bench press went from 35-pound dumbbells for sets of 7, and now you're doing sets of 8, now you're doing sets of 9, now you jump up to the 40s, like you can see that progression. And we also know that adaptation has taken place. So we're moving in the right direction, even though for the goal of hypertrophy may not be super specific, but we're going in the right direction. And we know that we'll get to where we need to go if we just keep following that old school progressive overload, the stuff people have heard 800,000 times by now.
But it's important, I think, that we keep hammering it.
Oh, for sure.
Because that is so true. It's because the boring message starts to fade away, and it's this very specific thing. It's this supplement. It's something that's actually a very small factor in your performance starts getting pushed to the fore. Different workouts every day, where it's more entertainment than it is actually training towards a purpose. That's something that I have had conversations endlessly with my clients and even the athletes. Back in my previous career, that we're looking for function. We can measure your VO2 max, we can measure all of these other things and collect data, but are you able to do more than you were before? Can you run further? Can you run faster? Can you lift more, as you alluded to? I think that these are the important measures.
Yeah, and it doesn't always, so I define overload as, there's probably 3 basic components, right? So like you mentioned, volume. Well, literally, are you able to do more work? Like the weight times the sets times the reps. It's just literally work. If you went to the gym and did more work, odds are that's probably better. Now, we could argue about how you did it and everything else, but in general, your ability to do more work is a positive. Can you do more work in less time? Can you have a higher density? Your volume divided by the time it took you to accomplish it. So maybe you did the same work in 60 minutes, but you came back next week and did it in 57 minutes. That's a better density. Like you did more work in less time, so that's positive. And then obviously just like your 1 rep max, like what is your true absolute strength? And we could do a 5 rep max or 8 rep max or whatever. It doesn't matter. Are you physically stronger? Are you moving more load for some, low rep type thing? And of course, we could throw speed and rep quality and stuff in there.
Yeah.
But if people just realize and tracked some form of volume, some form of density, and some form of intensity. So intensity here we're using as percentage of 1 rep max or just simply the load that you lifted.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're going to be pretty far ahead. And what you'll find
Yeah.
is it's not always getting stronger. What I typically find is do more work, do more work, do more work, better density, better 1RM. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
always follow that exactly, but it's some progression kind of like that.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting as you start breaking out into these different areas. This is where we can start stepping into the world of dogma and tribalism.
Oh, sure.
Right. So, and I think these are really important conversations. You mentioned carbohydrates, the biggest swear word in nutrition in many corners of the internet. Right. We start arguing about sets and reps and what's heavy, and people need to be lifting heavy for bone density and muscle mass, and without actually putting a real definition around what that means. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Sure.
As we start thinking about this dogma that can start coming into the real world, into the general population, what do we mean when we say heavy? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I like to think of rep ranges. So one of the things I changed with my online clients years ago, and I wish someone would have told me this because it would have saved me so much time. With an online environment, and most of these people are intermediate to more advanced. They're familiar with weight training. They've been doing it for a while, that kind of stuff. It's hard to give them an absolute percentage, say, of 1RM on everything. So they're like, oh, I do dumbbell bench press again. Like, how heavy do I go? Like, where do I start? And I realized by programming a rep range, so I might say 6 to 8 rep range. So if you can do 8 reps super easily, you probably need to go a little bit heavier. If you can only get out like 4 or 5 reps with good form before I'll say technical failure, you're kind of out of the range. So let's lighten the load and do a few more reps. And so by programming rep range, I can then get the area I want to hit without having them do a whole bunch of testing. And then it results in kind of automatic auto regulation, meaning if they're in week 7, oh man, I was doing 35 pounds and I was doing 7 reps. Oh man, now I'm doing 9 reps. Okay, I went outside the rep range, so I need to go and take a heavier weight. Okay, now I'm back down to 5 or 6. So it allows you to progress that way.
Right.
So by using those types of definition, heavier, I would say, is you could do singles, you could do doubles, you could do triples. So heavier rep ranges I'll use is like a 3 to 5 rep range. Most people I work with don't need to do absolute 1RMs. Even powerlifters don't need to do that all the time. And then I would maybe throw 6 to 8 as kind of a intermediate, like the old school Bill Starr 5x5 routine. Like you can add a lot of muscle and get brutally strong on, even like the 5 rep range, I think. Now, again, will that get you powerlifter strong, like absolute 1RM? Maybe, maybe not. We can kind of debate that. But I think for the average person to lift, look at the 3 to 5 rep range, and I'd say the 5 to maybe 8 rep range. I would consider, air quotes, kind of the heavier side.
Right. And I love how you describe that, because it's the description of the principle of overload.
Yes.
Right. And so we need to stay within our ranges. If we set, maybe it is 5 to 8, maybe it's 8 to 12. If we stay within that rep range and we continue to progress, we're going to adapt to the stimulus.
Yep.
Right. And that goes for bone density. That goes for lean tissue. With a lot of my clients that are coming into my practice now, we're 70 and up. So we choose a rep range that's in that 12 rep range, maybe even starting 12 to 15.
Yeah.
But we're making sure that we're not able to do 40 with that weight. Right. We're really looking at, do you have 2 more in the tank? And with every one of them, we're seeing the increase in lean muscle, we're seeing the increased bone density, but more importantly, as you said, we're seeing the increased capacity to do the work.
Yep.
So we're seeing the adaptation, and you are able to do more. And they're seeing it apply into their life, getting up off the ground, they're playing pickleball, playing tennis. That I think is the really important piece for me is, are you making progress and are you within the range? And that not everybody needs to be in that 3 rep range.
Yeah, it's trade-offs, right? And again, you can even get fancier and say, like, for some, new clients, or let's say in their mid 40s, I may say a 5 to 8 rep range, but like you said, I may spec a 2 or 3 RAR. So what's called a reps in
Yeah.
reserve. So
Right.
yes, I kind of want you in this range, but it's a heavy deadlift. I'm not so sure you should go all the way to an absolute 8 with your eyeballs popping out of your skull. Let's say this 5 to 8 rep range, but let's do a 2 RAR, meaning you're 2 reps still away from failure. And
Yeah.
the other rule of thumb I have is, for pretty much all the lifts, unless it's a max attempt, someone should walk into the gym and see you on rep 7 or 8, or even set 3, 4, or 5. They should not be able to tell any difference at all. It should look like exactly like the first part of your set. Like, you should not, whatever your form was, we can debate about perfect form and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It should not deviate from what you intended it to be. If your squat turns into a good morning, something's wrong. We need to back up again, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I love that. The maintenance of form, that's how I would usually let my people know, okay, it's time to move on,
Sure.
right? If we're now maxing out our rep range and our form looks incredible, then okay, we can go on.
Yep.
Like you said, there's no sense in getting to 8 and failing and you're all over the place, your form's really poor, but you finished your 8.
Yeah.
You know, let's not have any ego injuries in the gym. And I'm speaking to myself.
Yeah, and it God, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, even myself, like a couple of weeks ago, one of my things was, before we leave for travel, can I get on a farmer's bar setup on almost 2-inch handles and 1.9-inch handles? Can I hit 500 for a single? My goal right now with the 2-inch handles is 400 for a single on over thick handles. And I was doing pretty good, but I know I probably have enough strength to do it because I've done it before. But I'm not quite so sure if my soft tissue is ready for that. So I purposely been trying to be very slow, very methodical about it. And then before we left on a trip, I hit 390 pretty easy. And there's that little thought in your head that's like, hey, man, just go for 400. And I'm like, but that would break the progression I had outlined for myself. And I'm like, I'm not competitive in this. It's just purely for my own ego. It's something I want to do. So I just said, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to do it. But it was hard because you're thinking like, oh, I could get it. But then I'm like, man, if I injure myself, I'm going to be so pissed. So I'm just like, nope, I hit my 390. I'm going to walk away and come back another day.
It's so funny because I learned that exact lesson a couple of years ago and was similarly on a trap bar going for a new PR and felt great. Like, oh, let me just try another one. Let me just try either another rep, or I think maybe I added 5 pounds and I think I could get it. And that soft tissue, I broke my progression. Soft tissue in my shoulder, of all places, wasn't ready. And just a little something, just a little tweak, and I was out of upper body work for a month.
Yeah.
And so it just, those injuries in pursuit of a goal, I think it's just so important to understand. And you mentioned something really important, your goal being to do this, right? And so that's how you planned your training. And I think that as we go from now dogma and breaking out of these set mindsets, whether it's no carbs, whether it's you've got to lift in the 1 to 3 rep range, context for me is what really matters here. Right? What is my 83-year-old female client trying to get out of her training versus what are you trying to get out of yours, Mike, versus what am I trying to get out of mine? It all comes down to the goal, the amount of stress you're under, seasons of life you're in, and what is right for you, what's going to fit into your life. I know a large part of your work is around metabolic flexibility, but I think it expands into all areas, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think exactly what you said, like, having your overall higher goal. Like it for me personally, as much as I love lifting, yeah, I want to pick up the Thomas Inch dumbbell, this crazy 175-pound weird looking dumbbell and shit,
Yeah.
just because it's fun. I mean, no other reason. But if I'm honest, like my main goal is we have a kiteboarding trip coming up. We're going to be gone for 5 weeks. My higher goal above all my lifting would be, can I hit 30 feet on a kiteboard jump vertical? I've hit 26. I probably got to hit 20 feet consistently. So back to the deadlift, that was a filter I used to run it through of, okay, yeah, I hit part of this, but is this really my all-time higher goal? If I injure myself here, that's going to screw up all the kiteboarding trips and everything else I have planned. So I'm going to walk away. Now, consequently, yeah, trying to do that on a kiteboard is probably not the safest thing in the world. There's a bunch of unknowns. I feel like I'm doing it in a very hyper-conservative way. It may not appear that way, but I've accepted that there's a lot more unknowns and a lot more higher risk in that activity, and I'm okay with it. But to me, the gym is much more of a fixed thing. Like nobody's coming in and adding random weights to my thing. No one's changing the wind. The parameters are the parameters. And if I screw it up, it's 100% my fault. So for me personally, the risk in the gym is less because one, it's not my absolute number one goal, and it's a more controlled environment. And I think for most clients, that's probably true also. Like you mentioned, a lot of times it's like, I just want to play with my kids. I want to get up off the ground. I want to play pickleball. Training and all this stuff is incredibly important for that. But not everybody has the goal of just to lift more weights in the gym. It's usually to use that as a vehicle to do something else. And so that something else thing is actually their higher priority than overall.
Yeah, that's ultimately how we view training. In this real world, taking the lessons from sport, our lifting wasn't just for lifting or jumping or whatever else we were doing. It was in service of basketball, hockey, soccer.
Yeah, it's for transfer.
Sport, right? It's to augment this priority that you have, which is your sport. And I see life in general as that, right? Maybe your sport is going to be picking your grandkid up and throwing her in the air. Right. And so we need to train so that you can continue to do that. Maybe it's pickleball, but it's not really for me to judge what your goal is.
No.
We saw, you and I had this conversation, and we saw this messaging coming out on Instagram and on a podcast recently. You have to stop deadlifting and squatting and all these things, by 40. Well, what are you doing? Well, what? Why?
Yeah.
What if I want to do that, right? I think that we have to prepare people for their goal first and foremost. Right? I love what you outlined. Okay, I want to hit a 30-foot jump on a kiteboard. Okay, let's prepare for that. What are the demands? What are you going to need to be able to withstand from a force standpoint? So I think that's the first part of context is what are you training for?
Yeah. And even related to that, I was doing a belt squat the other day at the gym. And so when I do them on purpose, I'm going, literally putting my butt on my ankles because if I really screw up a jump and I'm coming down, maybe I probably shouldn't land it. But if I am trying to land it, I'm going to probably get absolutely compressed on the board. And I may end up in a range of motion that if I haven't trained there, may not be the best. So on that movement, because there's no spinal loading, I'm actually going to go as far down as I can. I'm going to push my knees as far out over my feet as I can. And it's weird to see people just look at you like you're an alien in the gym. Yeah. Like I had one guy when I was traveling, I was doing this. He was super cool. He comes up, he's like, "Hey man, you really look like you know what you're doing, but why are you doing it that way?" And I was just explaining to him, here's the thing, here's the goal, here's what I can do. Yeah. He's like, "Oh." And then literally 2 weeks later, different gym, guy's like, "So are you doing that for your deadlift?" And I'm like, "No," explain to me, I do it for kiteboard and whatever. And he's like, "Oh, so it doesn't help your deadlift." And I'm like, so obviously I think his goal was deadlifting only. He just wanted to know if it was going to help his deadlift or not. Yeah. But again, context specific. If my goal was powerlifting, and I only really ever have to squat to parallel, you could make an argument that maybe going that far down is cutting your weight severely, and so you're not getting as much overload. It's not specific to the movement you're competing in, so it's probably not as useful. Mm-hmm. I would argue some joint health and maybe some other mechanics there might be useful for some lighter hypertrophy work. But again, back to like what you said about context and what is the goal, what are you trying to do, will determine what are the things that are going to be best served in order to accomplish that. And again, it may not be doing something for the absolute maximal load. Like I know by using that more range of motion, like I'm severely cutting the load I can use, but that's okay because that wasn't really the goal. The goal is kind of eccentrically absorb as much force as possible through a full range. And I want to have that full range to be accessible.
Yeah. And it's that eccentric loading. So what we're talking about with eccentric loading is the lowering down of the weight,
correct.
for example, in a squat. And I find that such an underrated trait in both in sport, but then as we come out into these activities we want to do, it's one of the main things that I work on with every single client, regardless of what they're trying to achieve. Maybe it's pickle, maybe it's tennis, skiing. Your ability to put the brakes on is going to be important for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
If you trip and you put your foot out in front of you and you can't put the brakes on, you can't eccentrically control your body weight, you're going to be on the ground and struggling with something. So it's a really important point that you brought up there. And I think training these traits really bleeds into and talks to this general preparation that we're doing in the weight room for the more specific activities.
I do think it's that eccentric, that ability to handle those impulses, those missteps, those things like that. Of course, if you're stronger over the whole range of motion, that's of course going to transfer. But I do think most people could benefit from doing some safe form of eccentrics and especially isometrics for those specific tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And just building in that well-rounded program that allows people to adapt. I always found that injuries in sport, they were force, velocity, direction specific.
Yes.
Right? Hockey was a very different force profile and direction profile to basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to really make sure we were training through those range of motions, as you were alluding to with your catch on the jump from the kiteboard. As we start, I guess, building a framework for people, we've got their goal as the overriding thing that's going to feed the training program. As we go through the layers, how do you start thinking about the stress that an individual is under in that playing into their training?
Yeah, I've been using heart rate variability as a good marker for that for, probably 12 years. I mean, I started as part of my PhD in 2008. We were looking at HRV in response to energy drinks and a bunch of other stuff.
Can you just explain that a little bit for us? For those who don't know what HRV is.
First, heart rate variability is just simply the status of your autonomic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system has basically two sides. One is the sympathetic or the stress side. So just like pushing down on the gas pedal in the car, I'm inducing more stress on the engine, but the car is going to have a little bit higher level of performance, higher RPMs. So if you're doing more stressful exercise, you have an increased heart rate, you have an increased output, but there's more stress on your system. Again, stress isn't necessarily a bad thing per se. You've got the brake side, which is more on the parasympathetic response. So I increase something called vagal tone or increase parasympathetic output. I'm actually stepping on the brake harder, so the car is going to slow down. So we see heart rate slow down, kind of more of the standard rest and digest and recover. And when we do heart rate variability, we're getting this kind of marker of, how far are you sympathetic? How far are you parasympathetic? Most of the time, you can do this first thing in the morning. You can use devices like Garmin and Aura or what other things. And it gives you a really good idea of the overall status of your nervous system. And that's not everything, but I found over time it's pretty useful. So if someone had a really hard training session, that stress may carry over to the next day. Or they had an argument with their spouse or their boss or whatever. Like stress could be psychological, could be physical, could be biochemical, could be a lot of different things. And I have found that HRV is very accurate at picking that up. The caveat is it won't really tell you what type of stressor. It'll just tell you that you are stressed. And so I do find it is useful for that. And then back to context, it all depends on what are you trying to do. So I would say if I divide them into two camps, we have People are on the athletic side where their training is kind of their main thing. They might be a professional, they might be paid for it. With those kind of people, most of the time their training is their number one stressor. And hopefully it is. Like that's kind of their goal. Obviously, they have games or competition that would be in there too. And then you've got more general population or people that just like training. What I found in that group, a lot of times their general life stress is their number one stressors. So it's different. It's their lack of sleep. They're drinking 8 cups of coffee a day. They hate their job. They've got a long commute. They got cut off. It's all these other things. So they're a little bit different situations.
I'd like to add alcohol into that.
Yeah, you can add alcohol. You could add all sorts of stuff to it.
Yeah.
But the principles are actually still the same. It's just you're dealing with different types of stressor. With the athlete, it's actually a little bit easier because it's more quantified. We know, okay, what did you do? How fast did you perform? And what's going on? We can make modifications and tweaks there. For general population, you're just kind of figuring out, okay, what is what I call coaching leverage? I'm looking at the physiologic response times the client's ability to change. And I'm going to start with whatever has the highest aggregate score. So, for example, sleep is very popular and trendy to talk about. Super important, high physiologic effect. Trying to get Bob to go to bed 2 hours earlier just because he needs 8 hours of sleep instead of 6. Good friggin' luck with all of that, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard. So Bob's like, screw you. So you're telling me I can't hang out with my spouse and watch Netflix for 2 hours a night and I'm supposed to go to bed? Kind of, yeah. He's like, screw you. This is stupid. I'm not doing it, right?
Yeah.
But you maybe tell him, hey, let's try to eat more protein. Here's what protein looks like. You probably might even lose some weight doing this. Oh, wow. I get to eat more of something and actually lose weight? Yeah, cool. All right, cool. I'm in on that, right? So biasing things that have a physiologic response that are going to drive the actual physiologic change, but also biasing them towards the client's ability to actually execute it. Because the advantage you have on someone who has kind of a trash bin fire of general population is it probably doesn't matter a whole lot where you start. Like you could start with green vegetables, micronutrition, no alcohol, sleep. You've got tons of things to start with that will physiologically move the needle. So why don't you bias them into the things that they're more willing to change? If all those things are about the same score, like rig the whole thing in their favor, like get them some wins, get them moving, make it easier for them to do the things they're going to be helpful.
That's absolutely fantastic advice. I really want people to pay attention to that. Ultimately, all of this is about, can somebody change their behavior?
Yes.
Right. I'm not a good coach because I have a PhD and I know all this stuff. I'm a good coach if you change what you're doing.
Correct.
Right. That's it. It was the same in sport. It was rarely the case that anyone on our staff was tapped out knowledge-wise. Right. We didn't get so far into a pro athlete's physiology that we just didn't know what to do next. It was that they were playing PlayStation until 4 a.m.
Yeah. And being on Twitter.
Yeah. It wasn't that complicated, right? Could we make a good enough case to the athlete that they needed to change that, right? Or was that even something that we could take on right there and then? There were certain things that we just, if you've had a player that's never done cold plunge, we saw this in soccer. Kid comes over from Africa, right? Not a big fan of ice cold water.
Yeah.
Right?
Shocker.
And we're going to fine him every time he doesn't get in the cold plunge after practice. Like, are we really?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to do more harm physiologically if we force that on him than how about we just get him to fuel properly after?
Yeah. And elite level athletes are not exempt to anything I just said either. It's hilarious that, like, yes, you have some that are more compliant. Yes, you've got some that'll just kind of do whatever you tell them. But the majority, shocker, are actual humans who have a life and have their own preferences, have things they believe work, have things they don't want to do, and even then, like I won't say any names, but I was in the NBA several years ago. They had a new GM and he said, okay, everybody has to train, 3 days a week or whatever it was. So one of their top players comes in day one, he goes, here's my check for the fines you're going to assess me over the course of the season. He's like, I'm not training, and walks out of the room.
Yeah. Dude, I'm like, same deal.
Okay.
I have had that conversation. Sat in the head coach's office. We had a guy, he wasn't much of a trainer. He walks into the coach's office. We are like, okay, here's what you're going to have to do. Yep. And I'll paraphrase. This is, well, You guys just gonna have to find me. I've got to walk
Yep.
out. um, and that's I think the misconception with pro athletes. They weren't exercise science majors or
No.
nutrition enthusiasts. They like playing their sport. They're really good
Yeah.
at playing their sport, and our job is to support them in that. Right. And so where can we educate them? What do they need to know? What can just happen to them? Right? What can we change about their environment? And I take those lessons out of sport. And environmental design for me is such a critical piece of this behavior change. I know in myself, I know I'm supposed to be taking my vitamin B supplements. You know, I have the genetic mutation that makes it hard for me to absorb it. So I know I'm
Sure.
supposed to take this. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist to me. It's in the cupboard. We got all the stuff. I will never take it. It's got to be in front of me. I've got to run into it every day. And it's got to be really, really easy for me to do.
Yeah, and that's the systems based approach. And it's interesting that when I started doing all this stuff many years ago, I thought, oh my God, like people who coach elite level athletes, that's crazy. That's the elite of the elite. And
Yeah.
there is something to that. Like you have to be very knowledgeable. You do have to be qualified. There's lots of
Yeah.
money on the line, lots of responsibility. But the interesting part is, do these guys eating this many calories have the food they need? Do they have a place to prep it? Do they have everything that's there so they can literally just go about their life as easy
Yeah.
as possible and find a way to get it done? You know, top level bodybuilders would literally have someone who lived in their house that would make their food and do all the other stuff with them. Like elite level athletes, easy way is just, can I talk to your chef and just give him the stuff that I want you to do? He or she will make it for you. Will you eat it? Oh, you mean I don't have to sit down and do anything? They'll just tell me when it's ready. And yes, we'll take you entirely out of the loop. You just have to eat the food.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's great. Right.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it is this, like you said, the systems approach, getting the environment to make it easy for them to do because, shocker, they're humans too. And
Yeah.
it's not always automatic for them to do all the things we assume that they should be doing either.
Yeah. And I'll confirm that from the work we did. You know, Toronto Maple Leafs, biggest
Yeah.
hockey club in the world. We went 3.5 years without having a single non-contact injury.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I would go to these conferences. You'd go over to Europe and go to their soccer conferences, and there would be people presenting on these groin injury prevention programs. And I'd be looking at this thing like, oh my God, like, I'm an idiot. Like, what is he talking? How do they do all of this stuff? Meanwhile, when you look at their injury record, they've got the highest injury record, the most groin injuries, you know, in
Yep.
the history of soccer, and we haven't had a single injury. Our approach was literally like, I wanted the guy to step out of his car into a river and just get swept through the system.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We built a kitchen, hired chefs so that they had the food. We implemented the nudge program, the behavioral economics of, okay, the stuff we want them to really focus on eating is at the start of the buffet.
Yep.
When they walk in, if a guy had to gain mass, chef handed him his smoothie when he came in. Even down to like how the equipment guys thought about keeping the place tidy. Instead of a big trash can in the middle of the locker room that all the guys throw their tape into, everyone had one at the side of them. Right? It's just these little things. They had appointments in the training room instead of it being athlete driven. They had a lifting time when the whole team had to be in there lifting. The coach had his time for his meeting. It just happened to them as they went through the building and exited. If we could cut down on decision fatigue for them and just let them focus on being hockey players, we knew the results would be incredible. And they were. And that's the same as we come out. These are guys with full support staffs. So if you're going into this program that's incredibly complex, what makes you think you can implement that on your own?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing I do a lot, and I'm sure you did too, is just I just look at all the intake forms, you know, the hour call, blah, blah, blah. This person's already a client. All I'm looking for is like what is the main leverage? Like because I can't give them 17 things to do day one, whether they're a pro athlete, general population, whoever. It's just not going to fly. So I want to find, okay, what's the one or two things? If we really nail this for a couple of weeks, cool, we're going to be better. Great. Now we'll move down to the next layer and the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. And if they're not able to execute it, let's do some troubleshooting. Okay, why isn't it happening? And if there are legit reasons and blocks there, maybe we change tack, maybe we move on to something else, and then we come back to it again. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about the execution. And then the client has the luxury then of knowing that someone is looking out for them and trying to take their knowledge base and find the things that are going to move the needle, so that they feel confident when they do the thing, which is probably harder because it's a new habit. They're like, oh, okay, I know this is a thing that's going to move me forward, which I think is the luxury of having someone helping you with that. Because otherwise, and this has happened to me too, is there's 800 other things to do, and there's a shiny object syndrome, and everything else looks good, and this program was great, and I only did it for 2 weeks, and you just end up being a complete disaster of everything going on.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as far as our framework goes, that sort of moves us into another area, which is the season of life that we mentioned earlier. And what's your goal for this period of life? And is it realistic for this period of life? You and I were talking before we hit record here, and we were talking about some of the images that get put out into social media, right? J-Lo, this is what 50 can look like. Like, that's physiologically what's possible for 50 to look like, with plenty of surgeries and no limit on resources and all the time in the world. We mentioned Hugh Jackman, getting ready for Wolverine. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment here, but I think some of that messaging is quite dangerous. Or maybe not dangerous, but it's misleading.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit disingenuous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the right word for it. I'd like you to speak. You've worked with a lot of these people. Speak to what it would take for me as I'm a 55-year-old guy. I'm a CEO. And I get presented this program of you can look like this at 55. What does that take for me to be able to achieve results like that?
Yeah. A lot of time, money, and drugs, probably, to be honest. But so a lot of times it's hard if you haven't been somewhere, you don't know what it takes to get there. And that isn't always a negative. Like, if I knew my PhD was going to take me 7 years full time when I started, there's probably a damn good chance I never would have started, right? So it's not always a negative per se. But I think that's the luxury of having a coach who can say, okay, you work, let's say 50 hours a week. Your priority is to be with your kids when you're home. You've got a 45-minute commute. Realistically, getting you to train an hour a day over lunch is probably the maximum we can do. So we could maybe do more on the nutrition side. We could do some more other things, and just having a realistic conversation with them of, I'm not telling you this is not possible, but I'm saying you are going to have some constraints on what you can do because of the other priorities in your life, which is 100% totally fine. I'm not saying put your kids up for adoption and quit your job or whatever, right? We're just being realistic. These are the constraints you have on your system. And also just getting verbal commitment from them of, in terms of priorities, where is this? Some people might say, okay, my job is first, family second, this is third, vice versa, family is first, then job, then this, whatever. Whatever they decide is fine. But then you have to operate within those constraints. Mm-hmm. And then you may have to explain to them that we could maybe get a better result, but we're going to have to take from something else, or you're going to have to be more compliant here. We're going to have to do something that's a little bit more difficult. And again, it also is difficult because you don't know initially how someone's going to respond. I've worked with a few people that I'm like, oh my God, they're just crazy ass hyper responders. We didn't do a whole lot, really. Yeah. And they just get crazy responses. Other people, not so much. They're almost the inverse. We're kind of hitting everything right. I don't think they're lying to me. That just takes longer for them for whatever reason. You don't know the response. And what I always try to get back to them is you can control the controllable thing of, eating the food, getting the sleep, down regulation, training. You can't directly control the end result. Right. You can then control and be more tight with the things we're doing, and we can modify those. Yeah. But you can't really control the result. And all of this has to operate within the constraints of the system. So even on an intake form, that's the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking for where is their leverage to get them to their goal. And the second thing I look at, probably because I've done way too many engineering classes, is like, what is their constraints? Like literally from how much time do you have to train? What equipment do you have? Where do you go? How long does it take you to get there? What is your support structure like? Like all these things to then try to figure out what is the best steps moving forward. But a lot of what is presented online is, again, I would say at very best, if I'm being nice, like very disingenuous. Like,
Yeah.
has someone maybe made that transformation? Maybe, but you might be looking at an outlier or a complete freak, and like
Yeah.
you've worked with like pro athletes are a great example of it's hard until you've seen it to realistically realize how freaky of freaks there are. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
how many standard deviations away from just normal some of these humans are. And
Yeah.
sometimes you get lucky and you run into one of those, in general population, they can make really great results. But that's you run enough numbers, that's not the average.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, like, how many teams? So NCAA, NBA, two NHL teams, MLS team. There wasn't a single person on any of those teams that I encountered that looked like Hugh Jackman when he was posing for photos as
Yeah.
Wolverine. Not one. Not a
Yeah.
single guy. These are the supposed elite of the elite, right? They're athletes. We're not trying to make them look like that.
Right.
So I think that's the other side of it is that is presented as healthy and athletic.
Correct.
And it's neither, frankly. And it's also very transient.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was actually interviewed when he did Les Mis, and they had the big scene where he had his shirt off, and he talked about peaking for that moment. Like for the filming of that scene, he did a full bodybuilding comp preparation for that scene, and never looked like that again. Right?
Oh yeah, especially for film, because
Yeah,
you only need those few minutes. That's all you need. That's all you need.
yeah. And I think it's hard to understand how transient that is if you haven't been there. I've done physique competition prep just to try it on myself
Mm.
so that I knew about that. And I can tell you, I literally, like, we did a photo shoot. I looked like that for about 2 hours. And it messes with your mind so badly, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because they're like, wow, I look incredible. I'll look like this forever. And an hour later, you no longer look like that. And you suddenly start hating yourself. Right? So I think that not only is it disingenuous to present it as it's possible, it's healthy, it's athletic, also, like, these guys don't look like that all the time.
No. No. And a telltale sign is if you have people who have a fair amount of ink or have a fair amount of tattoos, and they're showing half naked pictures, just look at their artwork and see how different it is and see how many old photos they keep rerunning.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever done that, but you'll notice that they'll take a lot of photos over a very short time, maybe in different scenarios, maybe in different scenes, maybe in different things. And then they'll just keep running those photos all the time to make you think they look like that. They probably only look like that, like you said, for a couple hours. And then all of a sudden you see an update and you're like, hey, you got like 4 more tattoos there. What happened to? Oh, wait, I see this other photo. Like the tattoos got lasered off. Like what's going on?
Yeah, that's a really great point. That's such a funny way to look at it. I love it. And so I think, again, it comes back to that goal. Hugh Jackman specifically training for that goal, that moment, for the marketing, the photograph for that movie. This picture of him that I saw with this health program that was being promoted for executives was next to a picture of Russell Crowe, age 60, where he had like his belly hanging out of his t-shirt, and it was like, look at this guy. The difference here is habits, and it's this and it's that. Well, Russell Crowe's also renowned for transforming his body for his roles. So he was probably also training to look like that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think, again, like presenting these two guys side by side, one who has obviously trained and peaked for that moment, another guy who's walking down the street having a cigarette, having just woken up in the morning. Like, it's not really a fair comparison for people, is it?
Yeah. The worst one I ever saw was the old, you might even remember this, the old Clark Bartram ad in, was it Muscle and Fitness? The picture they showed of him walking across the magazine page, like it was a full double page from left to right,
Yeah.
and they show him from being out of shape getting in shape, and it was some supplement ad, transform your fat loss or whatever. And then years later, he's like, yeah, I was in shape because I did a competition and they paid me to get fat. So they did the photos in reverse. They took the photos of him in shape and they paid him a lot of money to get fat to take the pre-photo.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Just amazing. Yeah. It's not always what you see.
Nope.
And so you mentioned one thing there with, we say, okay, how do I get in shape and look like Hugh Jackman? One of the things you mentioned is time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It takes so much longer than I think people are led to believe to make these changes on our physiques. And I think for me, it really comes down to a lot of curiosity and experimentation. You'd mentioned as well, like you can't necessarily guarantee the outcomes. And it's something Michelle and I talk about a lot with body type, right? You get some people who are very, very skinny. And when we'll talk about, some of the female actresses start very skinny, have to train and lift weights in order to fill out and become more curvy. But to suggest that anybody else could make that transition to where they are, again, might be disingenuous. Like everyone can't look like Cameron Diaz. Like literally everybody can't do that.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe there are on the men's side, there are guys that can't look like the Wolverine ideal image that's being put out there.
Yeah. Most people aren't built like The Rock. I mean, you're just not. Like you just don't have that structure, period. I'm not saying he doesn't work hard, not taking away anything away from him, but he's a very popular image that people can relate to. It's like, he's just a big dude. Look at the guy's size of his hands. He's just a big dude.
Yes. Yeah. We had this conversation with Dr. Carlos Daniel about preparing and developing youth athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about, you mentioned we've seen how many standard deviations apart from the average the elite can be. We were putting some thought into what is elite, right? Yes, it's the work ethic. Yes, it's all of these things. It's being able to hit the shot. But if I can do all that stuff at 5'9", and I'm a basketball player, and someone who's 6'9" walks in and can do all those same things, guess who's elite?
Yep.
And I think that's the same, with a guy like The Rock. Dwayne Johnson has all of the attributes to be elite in that domain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Somebody who is smaller, skinnier is just not going to be able to look like him.
Yeah. So, and look at the change in NHL player size over the years, right? So you worked in the NHL and you're old enough to know that from my perspective as a little bit more of an outsider, these new NHL guys are huge. Yes. I don't think people understand like how big and how fast they are, even compared to 10, 15 years ago. And you could say that's the same in basketball. You could say that's the same in football. It's just the progression, because if you are bigger, stronger, and faster, and you have all those other skills that other people do, shocker, you're going to be better.
In a game of physics.
Physics wins.
You're going to win. Yeah, exactly. And so as far as these adaptations go, I think, we're sort of pushed into a lack of curiosity and experimentation because we're taught, again, we go back to the dogma, we're taught carbs are bad. We're taught that you have to lift heavy. We're taught all of these things. And I think for you to find this program that works for you, your lifestyle, your season of life, your body type, in order to get the results that you want, I think it needs some curiosity and some experimentation on some different things to gradually shift that program over time towards what's actually going to work for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as you're working with clients.
Yeah, I have kind of a baseline-ish where I start people, and then it just kind of varies depending upon what the results are, what they like. Again, they're not going to always do things they like, but if I have options of option A and option B, and they like A and they hate B, and they can both get the same result, great, let's do option A. Sometimes they hate both options, and, well, sorry, you're still going to have to do that because it's kind of essential to the program. Getting their feedback, seeing where they respond better. And then sometimes just putting novelty in just for the sake of novelty, like which I used to never do and thought, oh, that's a poor, stupid trainer. What is he just giving them exercise to do they like? And I realized, oh, yeah, like that's probably useful. If it's a minor thing, it's not going to change the program.
Yeah.
They like arm training. Great. I'm going to add some
Yeah.
arm training to it. Like one of the questions I literally have on my intake form is, what is the one exercise you think is most responsible for your results? And if they put standing on a Bosu ball doing pink dumbbell arm curls with my right arm while looking up, I might think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, but I'm probably going to put it in the program.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going to look at the program I write and be like, man, this trader's dumb. Like I told him this is the best thing for me and he didn't put it in my program.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Which I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so again, you're all the way back to what is the thing? Like violently consistency, compliance again.
Yeah.
Right. So if I have to give up maybe 10% on the physiology side, but they're going to be hyper compliant, I'll make that trade all day, every day. Right. Because I know long term it's going to be a benefit. And one other side note I've told before is my buddy Sean Mishka was training some people for the Minnesota Vikings here years ago. And I went out to his place where he was training. I got there on a Friday. And I'm all excited. And he was doing a lot of plyometrics, a lot of just really, really great training stuff. And I get there and they're like all doing like arm exercises. And I asked him, I'm like, bro, like what's going on here? He's like, oh man. He's like, I told them if they follow my training to a T for 4 days in a row, this is off season, they could do arms for 20 to 30 minutes on Friday. And I was like, oh. And I asked one of the guys, and I won't say the guy's name, but makes multiple $1 million a year. And I asked him, I said, hey, no offense, but like, why are you training arms? And he flexes and he goes, gotta look on camera, bro. I was like,
that's right.
Oh, so these are all humans again too, right?
Exactly.
And Sean's argument, which I would agree with, is it's not going to hurt them. It might make them better. They like doing it. They were hyper compliant for 4 days. He's like, I got the thing I wanted. Yeah. So it was a great trade-off, right? So having them do things they like and they're going to be consistent with the program and it's going to make them get closer to their goals. Great. Which is why it's so hard, I think, to evaluate other trainers' programs online. Because unless you know exactly what they're doing, what their intent was, and I'm sure there's a lot of stupid programs that are written. I have no doubts that there are.
Yes.
But I know if I put some of my programs online, people would be like, what the hell is this setup? This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in the world. But there may or may not be hopefully I would argue there probably is a good reason behind it. But without knowing that, again, back to context, without knowing the exact context, it's hard to make those judgments. Again, because the best program never executed is worth nothing, right? It has to be executed and it has to be done, day in and day out.
Yeah, I've always said that. The best program is the one you'll do.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you think that somebody's actively going to get worse because they threw some arm curls in at the end of their program, like, come on. I promise you they're not.
Yeah. And on the flip side, knowing that, hey, if you really want to increase your VO2 max and it sucks, shocker, you're going to have to do some aerobic training. There's no way around it. And you're probably going to have to do some really friggin' hideous intervals. Sorry. Yep. If you want the fastest route, there is no faster route. No matter how much you hate it, you're just going to have to suck it up and do it. So there definitely is that component where you kind of like, what hill are you going to die on, right? You kind of have to pick your battles. Because at the end of the day, if you consent all the way to the client and they don't get the result, now you actually did them an entire disservice of the whole thing because you didn't want to have that hard conversation to start. Yep,
exactly right. And
I made that mistake too.
Yeah. Well, that's why you and I can sit here on podcasts and talk about it because we've made all the mistakes that were there to be made.
And that happens. Like I got in like 2005, I was scared to death to write a program, even though I'd written programs for people for 8 years for free because, oh my God, someone's actually paying me money now, but at the same point, it was the greatest thing ever because now I have skin in the game. Right. So now it's like, oh man, I know I have to be up to this level. And even going forward, like I had a client who did a physique show and she did great. And it was her third show she had done in a short period of time within 6 months because she made a qualifier for a professional show. And so we said, yes, do it. But I got super nervous because I'm like, man, that's 3 shows and that's a short period of time. It's not something I would typically do. I know stuff can go sideways. And so I paid a guy and said, hey, man, how much would you charge me for just to be on call for a week? Like, I can text you at any point in time and you will reply back. He's like, yeah, like $300. But great, done. I texted him maybe 3 times. I didn't really need him, but I felt so much better knowing that if I get over my head or stuff starts getting weird, like I have someone I trust who can help bail me out from that situation. And so I think you can always push your limit and you can always have someone else help you at that time too. So,
Well, that's like our whole premise was Vitality Collective, right? It's knowing that we've got a support system, that we are better together than we are individually,
yes.
right? Me having physical therapists and MDs and all these people to lean on as a part of this system makes the product so much more complete for the person that I'm working with. And so I think for practitioners who are listening, like, you have to have those people.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have the people that, because 99% of the time you'll be fine. But if you get to those cases where now you have questions and it's a little bit to the left or right of your core skill set, having those people just allows you to deliver. And that's where you get a better reputation, is because you didn't try and do it all on your own.
Yeah. If I were to go back, 20 years plus and tell myself like you should probably go find other experts, even if you have to pay them money and lose money training a client, you're going to be so much farther ahead.
Yeah.
Because there is kind of a thing when you get into it, you feel like, oh, I don't want to send this client out. I don't know if I want to do this or that. And you may not have to, but if you have someone you could bounce an idea off, like you have a physical therapist, like you have an MD, you've got whoever, you had a functional neurologist, like take your pick, nutritionist, whatever, go down the line. You can always call them and be like, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Is this something you want to look at in your office or have a referral? Or is there something simple I can do on my end that's within my wheelhouse to fix it? And if they're honest with you, they'll be like, hey, no, this is above your pay grade. Send them over. Cool. Right. The client's not going to be mad at you. You're going to be like, hey, I realize this is above my pay grade. I have this person. I trust them implicitly. See them, get an eval. We'll still work with you. We'll still do things. Like the client's going to be like, oh, that's cool. Like they're watching out for me. They have my best interest and they're still solving the problem that I paid them for. Maybe it's a little bit of a different route, right. And I think I would have just worried a whole lot less at that point too.
Yeah. And I you're right. Like you get further ahead and people trust you more.
Yes.
When you don't try and do stuff that you don't know how to do. And so, like, as we wrap here, I'd love for people to get your top 3 takeaways from today's conversation and from your own philosophy. If I'm approaching this world of fitness, where I've got all of these messages, I got Wolverine and Russell Crowe standing there staring me in the face, and I'm thinking, well, shit, I got to look like that as a CEO. How do you think about that as somebody who's busy, they're in a different season of life? What are your 3 big rocks that you would want people to concentrate on in their own training?
I mean, number one, it sounds self-serving, but find someone like yourself or myself or plenty of other good coaches out there. If it's over your head, just hire an expert. Like, yes, it's going to be expensive. Yes, true experts are expensive, but in the long term, it's way cheaper than hiring some schmuck who's going to screw up everything and waste your time. I've made that mistake in things outside of fitness, trying to find the cheapest person, and it's almost rarely ever worked out in my favor. So now I try to find someone who's more expensive and maybe work with them a little bit less or something like that, right? So find a high quality person you can pay to help walk you through it. Number 2, I would say there is no single silver bullet solution to almost anything. Like, yes, some of those things exist. Like if you're deficient massively in zinc, like supplying zinc could, change your life. And there are these little edge cases and things like that do happen. But most of the time, it's a multifactorial problem you're trying to solve. And just taking more methylene blue is probably not going to fix all your mitochondrial issues, or peptide whatever that's been tested on three-eyed ferrets with liver cells in a dish, right? Like, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to train. Even if we gave you all the drugs in the world, like, you're still going to have to train. So just know that there's no way around. You're just going to have to put in the work. There's more intelligent ways of putting in the work than not, but you're just going to have to do it. And then 3, I would say, just spend some time like thinking about what are your priorities and what are your goals. Like, is this something like you truly want to do, or is it something you think you should do because everyone else thinks that's the thing to do? Because I've worked with some of those people, and you get this kind of feeling it wasn't really their true goal, and then like 4 months into it, they're like, oh man, like I got to the thing I wanted, and it didn't solve all the issues, right? So I would say spend some time thinking about, and whatever you decide is cool. Like, whatever you want to do is totally fine. And then related to that, what is a true priority? Because it's human nature to want to do like, oh, I want to get super lean and shredded and run my business and be like the best father to everyone, right? Or best mother or whatever. Some people have maybe pulled that off, but odds are you're probably gonna have to prioritize something. And by definition of that, means you can only spend a certain amount of time on the thing, and it may take you a little bit longer. Like, one of the questions I got from John Barty years ago is, do you want a fast result that is a more aggressive result but very short, that's going to disappear? Or do you want a more consistent result that's going to take longer, right? So you can have fast weight loss, but it's not sustainable. Or you can have more sustainable weight loss, but it's not fast. You don't get to pick both.
Yeah.
And most people are like, well, I want both. It's like, that's not an option.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about that all the time of people trying to live at both ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
Right. You can't always be in a caloric deficit and always trying to be super lean and all this sort of stuff and impact like more lean tissue, more bone mass.
Yep.
Right. You
especially if you've been lifting for a while.
Right. You just can't. And so you really do have to zero in. And I want to pick up on a point that you mentioned there about we can give you all the drugs in the world. And, we can, steroids, it doesn't matter. You like, name the drug we can give you to enhance your training. You still have to train.
Yeah.
Right? You like all these guys, like The Rock, Schwarzenegger, all these guys who have obviously been on performance enhancing drugs. They train harder than anyone you've ever met. I guarantee.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the steroids.
No, I mean, The Rock's famous for having his whole friggin' gym shipped to where he's at. Yeah. Which is great. If I was in his position, hell yeah, I'd do the same thing.
So would I. Yeah, absolutely. So that's incredible.
The axiom I've kind of used is Oprah Winfrey, because she's a public figure. People have seen when she's been leaner, when she's been heavier. She, in theory, can hire a trainer. She can hire a coach. She could hire a chef. She could hire everyone to do everything for her, but she still has to do the work. Like, even in the best of the best situation, nothing will ever obfuscate doing the work, which I think is also why there's something very interesting about performance goals, whether it's physique or performance or whatever. Like, even under the best case scenarios, like, you still have to put in the work. Like, that is never going to change. Yeah. And on that, Mike, where can people find you to follow more of this messaging? Sure. Best place is probably the newsletter. So I send out a newsletter daily. Like, probably 90% of my content is through the newsletter, but it's free to join. Just go to MikeTNelson.com. There'll be a little thing that says newsletter. You can hop on there. We'll send you a cool free gift. We do have some stuff on social media, which is primarily on Instagram, which is Dr. Mike T. Nelson. And then we do have the podcast, which is also the Flex Diet podcast. And we've got certifications like the flexible dieting, which is the Flex Diet Cert, physiologic flexibility, some cardio stuff, HRV, and a whole bunch of stuff there.
Outstanding. There's so many incredible resources on that site.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't recommend people enough to go and really start digging into that material, because it really is a treasure trove. So whether you're a practitioner or someone just really enthusiastic and wanting to learn more, then definitely head over. We'll put all of that in the show notes,
Awesome.
Mike, so people can find you. And mate, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your time today. You've been so generous to spend this time with us, and we really look forward to a follow-up chat in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Mike T. Nelson. Here are the 3 things that I want you to take away from today's episode. Number 1, find a qualified expert to guide you rather than trying to figure out everything yourself. Investing in someone who truly knows what they're doing will save you years of spinning your wheels and might actually cost you less in the long run than cheap advice or going it alone. Number 2, accept that there's no silver bullet solution to your fitness goals. The work still has to be done, the training still has to happen, and multiple factors are going to need to be addressed simultaneously, regardless of what's being marketed to you. Number 3, get clear on your true priorities and goals, not what you think you should want based on social media. Prioritizing means some things are going to take longer, and that's not just okay, it's necessary for actually achieving what matters the most to you. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave a rating or review, and share this episode with someone you think might benefit. It really makes a difference in helping us reach more people who could benefit from these conversations. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Vitality Collective Performance, where we share additional insights, behind-the-scenes content, and updates on upcoming episodes. If you want to learn more about what we do at Vitality Collective, please visit www.vitality-collective.com. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.